Okay, welcome to Science Club. We are going to be looking at a sheep pluck, which is everything in the sheep from the neck down to the middle of the belly, minus the skeleton. This has come from an abattoir where this sheep would have been slaughtered for meat. So it's not being slaughtered especially for this. It's being slaughtered for the meat industry, which of course many sheep are. Now to take this out, place this on our chopping board here. You'll be able to see there and on the screen behind us. And we're going to give you a tour of this, and then we're going to dissect different parts of this, okay, so that we can look at the different tissues, and then we're going to have a chance to have a go at looking at this, okay, individually. So first of all, this comes from an organism. Organisms are made from what? You can put your hands up and you can ask. Yep.
Different organ systems.
Organ systems. Good. Well done. And organ systems are made up of what?
Organ systems are made up of muscles, would it be?
Muscles are an example of this.
Organs.
Organs. So organ systems are made from organs. And organs are made up of what? Tissues. And tissues are made up of what? Cells. Okay. Several different specialist cells working together to form a tissue. Several different tissues working to form an organ. Several different organs in the organ system. Now, this is the respiratory system. You should know the answer to this question. This is nothing to do with respiration, because what's respiration? Can you tell me?
Respiration is like creating energy.
Or you can't say create energy. Okay, you have to say releasing the energy from what chemical compound? What's the chemical compound that's in glucose? Excellent. So we release the energy from glucose with a little help from a little molecule in the air, which we breathe in, called what? Oxygen. And so we have glucose plus oxygen goes to what two products? Yep.
Carbon dioxide and water.
And water. And does respiration go on inside the lungs? Yes and no, not only in the lungs, because where does respiration occur?
Every single cell in the body.
Every single cell in the body. So this is a common misconception. People talk about the respiratory system thinking it's about respiration. It's not. It's about two processes. The first process is breathing or ventilation, which is getting air in and out of your lungs, okay? And the second process is gas exchange, which is getting what? And some of you have just done lessons on this. What's gas exchange? Yep.
It's when oxygen enters your red blood cells and carbon dioxide exits.
Good. So oxygen is going from the little sacs in the lungs called the alveoli. Sounds like ravioli, okay? But alveoli, and then that goes to the capillaries and the red blood cells, and then carbon dioxide goes from the capillaries back into the bloodstream, okay? What do we call that process of the movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to low concentration? Go. Diffusion. Excellent. And things diffuse from a high concentration of particles to a low concentration of particles. Excellent. Now, a little bit of a fun fact. It's not that fun, really. If I took one of you and locked you in an airtight room, you wouldn't actually die of oxygen deprivation. People think that you would actually suffocate from oxygen deprivation. You wouldn't. How would you die?
From breathing in CO2.
Yeah, having too much CO2. Because you have too much CO2, the levels in your blood rise, and you get carbon dioxide poisoning where your pH of your blood goes down. Just like if you put carbon dioxide into water, you get fizzy drinks, and that puts the pH down. And the pH goes down. That causes problems with all of your cells, and eventually you'll die, okay? So carbon dioxide, this is what happened on Apollo 13, and they had to make a scrubber to remove the carbon dioxide from the air using a sock and some chemicals. So we're going to look overall at the organs we've got here. We've got quite a few different organs, okay? Of course, we've got the respiratory system, but we've got parts of the digestive system and parts of the circulatory system. I'm going to start at the top. We have the trachea. Now, the trachea here is a very rigid, it's bendy, but it's got rigid rings of cartilage, like your nose is made of, running down it. If you feel it, and you feel your own throat, so everyone put your hand on your own throat, you can feel the little ridges of your throat as you go down, and that is the little rings. It stops what I call the Frappuccino effect. I'm sure there's a technical name for this. What happens when you drink a McDonald's milkshake too quickly with a straw, especially with these paper straws, because they collapse? Go on. Yeah, it goes, when you do, you get a headache. When you try and suck it though, what happens to the sides of the tube? it shrinks down, okay? Now, you don't want that to happen to your throat because obviously that would stop you from breathing. So they reinforce it with these ridges, okay? So what we've got here are lots of ridges down here to keep it open. People who are asthmatic often have problems with the trachea and the bronchi, which we'll look at in a minute, because they swell up and stop them from being able to breathe. And they take drugs like salbutamol to open their airways and help them breathe again. At the top, we've got a very hard cartilaginous part. So again, like your ears, which is what? What do you think is at the top of the windpipe? Anyone got an idea? It's about here in your neck. Yeah.
Is it some kind of like trapdoor thing?
Oh, not that quite. That's a good idea. It's called the epiglottis, which we'll get to that in a minute.
Is it the throat?
It's not the throat. This is actually the back of the throat, this bit, but it's the.
Is it like where your Adam's apple is?
It is your Adam's apple. Your Adam's apple is more technically called the
The talk box.
voice box or larynx. Okay, so it's the larynx, and this is where your vocal cords are. Okay, and if this was a really good sheep's pluck, you could even actually have the tongue attached to the back of this, but they've taken it off. So this goes down on the back of the trachea. You've actually got the esophagus, which is a completely different feel. It's a flexible tube of smooth muscle, much more flexible, and that's where your food goes down into your stomach. So not to be confused with the trachea or windpipe, which takes the air to your lungs. So as I go down, if I flip this over to the other way, I can see I've got the heart in the middle, okay, because your heart is right in the middle of your two lungs. And I could break into two bronchi, which we'll be able to see in more detail in a minute when I just dissect this away and take away the lungs, take away the heart. And these two bronchi, this is where the name bronchitis comes from, because your bronchi are the things that are infected in your bronchitis. And then you go down, it breaks into two more or several more branches called bronchioles. And this comes from a really, really questionable experiment that someone came up with. Latex, like these gloves are made from, starts as a liquid and you pour it and it sets and becomes hard. So someone come up with this bright idea about 200 years ago of taking some latex and pouring it into a person's throat. They were dead, okay? Because that would have killed them, but they were dead. They poured the latex into their throat, it filled their lungs, and then they put them into a vat of hydrochloric acid. And it dissolved away all the lungs, and it just left this lovely looking tree, with a trunk being the trachea, two branches being the bronchi, and lots of little smaller branches called the bronchioles, and ending in little circles called the alveoli, where the gas exchange occurs. So they actually got to see what the inside structure of the lungs looks like. Because you can't see, even when I chop this up, you won't be able to see that structure. Now, if we feel the differences in the tissues, you've got this very hard trachea, very soft esophagus. You've got very squidgy lungs because they are very, very air. They've got lots of air spaces. Now, if you compare that to this big red organ at the bottom, this is the liver. The liver is the largest by mass organ in the body. The biggest organ in the body by size is your skin, but this is the largest in mass. And this cleans your blood. So any blood that comes from your intestines after digesting your food, it cleans all the toxins like alcohol out of the blood, and it makes something called bile, which goes into your intestines. Now, all the intestines of the stomach are taken away because they can be quite dangerous because they contain bacteria, and they would be potentially quite risky to have. So we take those away quite quickly. That's why whenever you're like having fish, you don't keep the intestines of the fish. You have to remove them before you cook the fish because it's the intestines that contain all the nasty bacteria. If you remove that, then this is much better. You've also got the top of, and I think we've got a very fine bit here of the diaphragm. So the diaphragm, like the diaphragm of a drum, is a sheet of muscle that goes across the bottom of your rib cage, your thorax. And that's really important because your diaphragm's a big muscle, and when you tense it, it goes flat and it increases the volume of your thorax. And when the volume of your thorax increases, the pressure of the air inside your thorax, which is sealed, goes down. And that means the pressure in your thorax is lower than the air outside. And you don't technically suck air in. You actually have it pushed into your lungs. So the atmospheric pressure pushes the air into your lungs because the pressure in your lungs is lower. Now, if you have an accident or you get stabbed or something in your rib cage and it punctures your thorax, or even worse, your lung, every time you try and breathe in, you just suck air through the hole, okay? And you wouldn't be able to breathe properly. This is why that's really dangerous. And a first aid tip, which you shouldn't do without training, is that you take a piece of duct tape and put it over the hole to help them breathe. Another interesting surgical procedure, again, that you shouldn't do without any training, is if someone gets a crushed throat. So this area here is very susceptible. If it gets hit, it could be crushed. And doctors can take a Bic biro, a small scalpel blade. They can cut the scalpel blade and they cut the throat, and they can put the Bic biro into the throat and they can breathe in. So we talked a lot about this. I'm actually going to start the dissection now. I'm going to cut away the heart. So here's the heart. I'm going to cut away the heart, which is connected by this collagen, which is what we call a connective tissue. It just holds everything together. So collagen is what your skin is made of. And I'm going to try not to use the scalpel because the scalpels are more dangerous. It's easier to use this. And if we get a chance, we'll also quickly dissect our heart. There we go. So there's our heart. The heart's actually just a tiny bit smaller than our heart. Our heart's about that size. Okay. And you've got two sides to the heart. It's been cut open, unfortunately. But as I put my fingers down, I can actually connect up the different parts of the heart. So at the top here, okay, the right side of the heart pumps to the lungs, and the left side of the heart pumps to the rest of the body. And I can tell by feeling it that this has got the thicker side. So this is pumping this side here. Okay, so this side must be the left side, and that pumps to the rest of the body. And this side is the thinner side, the thinner, what we call ventricle, and it pumps to, so the right side pumps to the lungs. Okay, and I can actually show it's connected by doing this. This is really fun. I can put my fingers down. So this is the arteries I'm putting my fingers through. I can go up, and I can go through the veins, which bring blood to the heart. And what you get here is Mr. Heart the Glove Puppet. But you show that they're connected. I can connect the other one. If I do the other way, I can come out the other hole. So it's showing that the heart's made of two sides, two separate sides. Blood goes in through the veins and out through the arteries. And you'll learn more about that later. Okay. Now, we're going to cut a section of the trachea. So I'm going to cut the voice box off so we can see it. I'm going to be very careful around the esophagus because I don't really want to get lots of half-digested grass. So this is really tough because it's cartilage. I'm going to go through it with these scissors. Here we go. There you go. So you can see you've got a nice tube here. Okay. Ending there. You can actually look right the way through it. Okay. So the tube, you can see right the way through the tube. And then we've got, if I just cut another section of the trachea, so you can see one section of ridge. And you can compare it to a section of the esophagus. Go through. You can see that white material there. That is the rings of cartilage. Yeah, it's really tough. This, because it's cartilage material, it's really tough to go through. There we go. And I can actually see the two rings now. I've got a ring here. And I've got the ring through the esophagus. Okay, there. So that's the esophagus. So they look very different. Now, I'm going to turn this over and start just taking out one of the lungs. I'm going to take away the lung at the point where it connects here. So I'm going to cut through this connective tissue. And I should find the bronchiole. Okay, if I go through here on this side. And there's the bronchiole there. Found it. Because it's quite tough. Here we go. There's our bronchiole. Just here. So that's our main tube going in and out of the lungs. Now, if I can find a rubber tube, which we didn't get, we got a rubber tube in that cupboard there. There are some buns men. Going to nick one off there. Just the cupboard. It might be this cupboard actually. Boys, have a look in that cupboard there very quickly. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's pull one of those out. So, I forgot to bring one down. Pull the tube off. There we go. So I'm going to just try introducing some air into this. Now, these were damaged. They don't blow up very much. So I was going to try blowing up just one lung and see if I get a better result just with one lung. Okay, which I might do. Might not work that well. If I get my hand pump here and attach this to the hand pump. Okay, I need a volunteer. Mr. Murdoch looks like he's going to volunteer. Okay, and if you just want to pull that backwards and forwards, I'll hold on to that too, and I'll make the seal here. So stick that nice and sealed. Now, if you try blowing it up. Oh, look at it go. Bit faster, sir. Not too far, otherwise you'll get the first row when it explodes. Okay. All right. There we go. It's holding air. You can see those air sacs. Okay, as the air is being pushed in. It's not perfectly sealed because there are little cuts in it, but you can see it's actually taking in air. So that's great. But now I'm going to do something which is going to destroy the integrity of the lungs, so you won't be able to do that anymore. I'm going to cut through, so you can see our bronchi here. I'm going to cut through, and I'm going to expose the inside so you can see the structure on the inside of the lungs. You can see they've got a lovely pink colour because they've got a very good blood supply. So that's part of the adaptation of the lungs, is to have a very good blood supply. Can anyone remember what the other adaptations of the alveoli? What can we say about the alveoli walls? Yes?
Large surface area.
The large surface area, good. About the size of a tennis court if you could spread it out, apparently. Yep. And
Are they cell walls only one cell?
oh, you can't say cell walls. You'd lose the mark for saying the cell walls are one cell thick because cell walls are found in plants. So that's a really common misconception. I won't worry about that. But the alveoli walls are one cell thick. And the capillary walls are also one cell thick. Now, this bit's going to be a bit gross. It's going to bubble a bit. I'm going to do this. And you can see the air bubbles coming out. Okay, and you can see, actually you can see here, this is a bronchiole. It's a bigger bronchiole, but you can't see the alveoli, they're too small. You'd need a microscope to see them. Okay, if I took a slide of this and put it under a microscope, I'd see little kind of round structures where I could see the capillaries going around. It has a good blood supply. The alveoli walls are one cell thick, the capillary walls are one cell thick, and also there's mucus in the lungs to help it not stick together and help gas to dissolve in that. So all those are features of the lungs. So I'm going to put that to one side. The liver, there isn't much to see about the liver. It pretty much looks the same, okay? You can't really see much detail when you cut into the liver. I'll cut a little bit of it off just so we can see the separate kind of structure. There are small blood vessels running through it, but you can't see lots of different structures here. Very, very rich, dark tissue though, okay? Or organ, I should say. It's made of different tissues. And finally, before we let you think, let's open the hearts. We've got our lung section here. We've got our voice box here. We've got our liver here. We've got our bit of trachea here with a bit of esophagus. And I think that's everything. I could cut away a bit of the diaphragm if I can find it. This is the bit of the diaphragm here. So let's cut that away. You know, this is where if you get muscle twitches in your diaphragm, what's that called? Yep.
Is it hiccups?
Hiccups. There you go. So there's a bit of a diaphragm. And let's take the heart, and we're going to do what we usually do with the heart. We're going to turn it around this way, so the bottom of the heart is facing you. And I'm going to cut it open like a book. So I'm going to cut through the ventricle, straight down. I'm going to pull that open, so you can see the inside of the ventricle and the atrium, because the atrium is the bit that the vein is coming into. There you go. I can pull that open like this, opens like a book. And you can see here, I've cut through the arteries. So the arteries would be here coming out of the ventricles. And here, you've got the veins. And if I stick my finger through here, they'll come out here. Now, this is a really, really fascinating bit. This last bit before you put some gloves on and come and have a prod. If I cut this bit, this tiny flap of tissue here, without this little flap of tissue, everyone in this room would be dead. This is your heart valve. It's very, very thin bit of tissue. Okay, and it stops the blood flowing backwards. Every time your heart beats, it stops the blood going backwards into the veins and pushes them out into the arteries. And if you don't have this, or it goes wrong, it tears, your heart won't work properly, and eventually you could die. So and they can replace them though artificially, so don't feel too bad. So here we go. I'm going to leave this set up here. Please don't touch the scissors or anything else while you're doing this. We're going to put a pair of gloves at the end here, and then we're going to have a bin over here. You're going to come from this direction, and you're going to have a feel of the different tissues here. Okay, brilliant. Stay on this side of the bench, please. Come along and have a touch of the different parts here. Okay.
Is this your lunch tomorrow, is it?
I've got to take it to the school canteen, sir. But see, they actually would take meat like this and put it into a pie. This is what low quality meat, or they'd turn it into animal feed. I'm not sure they do that as much nowadays. Have a feel of the different tissues, and then put your gloves in that bag there. You can see that you've got the esophagus and the trachea there. Excellent. Have a go. Move along because we won't have too much time. There you go. Put your glove in the bin. And then you might want to go to the back and just use the sink to wash your hands. If we've got some soap, we'll check if we've got some soap next door. Soap dispenser. I don't think we've got one here. Okay. Excellent. So move along. Put your thing in the bin.
Where's the valve for the heart?
The valve, I don't know where I put that actually. There you go. But you can see it if you open that. You can see the valve. So if you open this up, see those little strings there? They're connected to the valve. You can actually see it. It's a tiny flap of tissue. Got the liver there. I feel the squidgy lung and the very hard larynx. Okay, and the squidginess of the lung. So doctors actually learn parts of the human body to identify them by touch.
It's just how much he wants to spend decorating a rocket.
There you go. Excellent.